In my pursuit for rezero knowledge, I found possibly one of the saddest things I've ever read about the series. This video will be about what would happen if Subaru was never summoned to the rezero world, and this video will be split into two parts. The first part will be what would have happened to Subaru, and the second part is what would have happened in the rezero world regarding the other characters. Of course, one of the biggest aspects of ReZero and why so many people love the series is that we see the growth of Subaru as a character. We see that in Season 1, Subaru is not really likable. In fact, many people drop ReZero because of Subaru's character, because Subaru is not a perfect character, and we all know that. During Season 1, Episode 18, which is Rem's Confession, we see Subaru develop. We further see Subaru develop in Season 2 when he comes to terms with his past. So of course the question is, would Subaru develop if he was never summoned? Would he be able to actually overcome his issues? Luckily we do know the answer for this. Tappei has actually specifically stated that Subaru, if he was never summoned to the ReZero world, would actually be scolded by his father Kenichi. And this will be around the time that Subaru would have been graduating from high school. This would actually withdraw Subaru from being a NEET, and then Kenichi would rehabilitate Subaru at his workplace. After around 2 years, he would then enter university and graduate as a loner, becoming a working adult. With this, Subaru would become a productive member of the working class, and he would eventually meet a kohai, or someone younger than him, who would find his incompetence cute, and this girl will be very similar to Rem in a way. And they would of course eventually get married. Subaru will have a happy life with his wife, and he may have children, we don't know. But Subaru would be happy overall, and then he would die, and there would be no real issues for him. Based on this, we can see that Subaru's father Kenichi is the catalyst for Subaru's character development if he was never summoned. And we do know that, of course, Subaru's insecurities actually come from being constantly compared to his father, because his father is, of course, such a charismatic person and such a great guy. And we see that in this sort of if route, if Subaru was never summoned, then Kenichi would have helped Subaru as a responsible father, which makes a change for most isekai shows. So of course now the question goes to what would have happened in the ReZero world if Subaru was never summoned. Now, I will pick up a quote from Russell Fellow. For those that don't know, he appeared in Arc 1. And he made an observation in Arc 5. Now, don't worry, there's no spoilers. But he made an observation that the world is changing because so many big things are happening in such a short amount of time. And he says that it may be another age of the witches because it's very similar. Now, some of the instances he mentions is, of course, the death of Betelgeuse, the Sin Archbishop of Sloth, the killing of the White Whale, and of course the erasure of the Great Rabbit. Now, of course, most of you realize that the reason why all of these things have happened is, of course, due to Subaru's summoning into the world of ReZero. If Subaru was never there, these things would never have happened. We know from Pride If, for example, that Tappei has stated that the reason why Subaru is able to succeed is because it's Subaru doing it. And it doesn't matter who Subaru surrounds himself with, as long as he's there, he's like the catalyst of change in the ReZero world. So him being present creates a large change which can essentially revolutionize the world. So if Subaru was never present, then the ReZero world will actually look a lot more horrifying, because we do know what would happen. We know that in Arc 1, Felt would get assassinated by Elsa, and of course Emilia would also die as well, and this has been confirmed by Tappei himself. However, that's not all, because you need to also realize that someone like Crush is going to fight the White Whale, and we do know what happens when Subaru is not present when Crush tries to fight and kill the White Whale. They get erased, as we see in Pride If. So we do know that not only would Felt get killed, Emilia would also die, but Crush would also get erased from existence. This would also have knock-on effects, because someone like Felix would actually die as well, as we see in Pride If. Characters like Julius would lose one of their best friends, Reinhard will never meet the person he's supposed to serve, which is Felt, and pretty much every camp will be, of course, devastated. The only camp which doesn't seem to be affected is, of course, the Priscilla camp. Likewise, this would also have a knock-on effect, because someone like Rem might actually still die to the curse in Arc 2. We don't really know, as far as I'm aware. I could be wrong on that. But also, people like Garfiel will still be trapped in the sanctuary, and they would never overcome their issues. Otto will never pay off his debt, and therefore he will most likely become a debt slave to Russell Fellow. And of course, most importantly, Beatrice will never find someone to have a contract with, and her goal will still be to die. The witch cult will still be active, and Beetlejuice will still be alive to, of course, carry out his ordeal, even though by this time Emilia would be dead. So we get this idea that without Subaru present, the ReZero world actually goes to turmoil. Without Subaru summoning, then pretty much the royal selection is postponed due to 2 candidates being killed, and of course Crush being erased. So there's pretty much nothing that goes right in the country of Lugunica if Subaru is not summoned. And this goes back to the start of the video where I talked about the observation I made. You can see that if Subaru stayed in the world of Earth, Subaru would have had a nice happy life. He would have had a happy waifu, he would have had his supportive parents, and instead he's of course summoned into the ReZero world without his permission, and he's pretty much thrust into a situation where he's constantly killed, tortured, and of course betrayed by people he cares about, for example by Rem in Arc 2. So again, we can see the sad thing where even though it's cruel for Subaru to be summoned without his permission, ironically, if he was never summoned and he never experienced all of these hardships, Lugunica would have been in ruin. Everyone he would have cared about if he was summoned would be dead, like Emilia, and in a way, Subaru being summoned is actually beneficial for the ReZero world, when in reality, if he was never summoned, he would have had a very, very happy life. And in my opinion, that's the saddest thing I've noticed about ReZero, that by Subaru being summoned, he has to suffer a lot, but in turn, by Subaru suffering, he's able to save the lives of many different people. He essentially gives up the happy waifu he would have had, and in return, he saves the world of ReZero, he saves Lugunica, he saves Emilia, he saves Beatrice. And is that a worthwhile sacrifice for Subaru? I don't know. Let me know what you think.